Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name's Alex and today I'm here to help you get a job after graduating from college or university. So I recently graduated from university myself and of course I had to start searching for a job. This job hunt was actually probably one of my longest job hunts I've had because I have completely switched industries, so I haven't had any previous experience in this industry and it was something new to me, so it took a little longer to kind of break the barriers and find something. But I'm happy to say that this week I actually got an offer, so I'll be starting a new job hopefully soon. They don't have a start date yet, but I thought I'd share kind of what I learned with you guys and some tips and tricks that might help you land your job a little bit faster. Alright, so my first tip is to network. So if you've seen my previous video about how to network, definitely use those skills and apply it to your job hunt. I recommend that if you are still in university or college, to start networking as early as possible. This really kind of helps you get a head start when it is time to find a job, or it might even help you find a job during school that can turn into a full-time job upon graduation. So I think going to networking events is obviously really important. I actually used to work at a bank and literally everyone that worked at that branch got the job because of someone they knew, including myself. So that just goes to show how important it is to kind of know the right people and increase your odds of getting the job you want, because obviously if they get, a reference from someone that they're a good person, that they know them, they're vouching for them, they're more likely to show interest in that candidate as opposed to kind of a random candidate in, a big pool of candidates they get from the internet. That's not saying you can't get a job like that, because that's actually how I got the job that I have now, but it definitely makes it easier in the process and it makes it easier to kind of stand out because, they already know kind of who you are. Yeah, I feel like that's really important, and just try to get, an early start on networking and never really stop networking, because you never know, even if you have a job, a better opportunity might come up and you never know when you might run into those people in the future or need their help in the future. Alright, so my second point is to do your research. So before you apply to any jobs, make sure you research the company, you research the role if possible, and make sure you know kind of what to expect and if it's a good fit for you, because I've applied to jobs where I didn't really care about what company it was or anything, I just wanted the job. But when it came down to the interview and all that, I realized that their culture of their company wasn't for me, and I potentially could have realized that if, I went through their website more in depth. And then also because they might ask you about the company during the interview, which, that's a later point, but it's never too early to research, and it can also help you if you include some of the values that they list on their website or some of the things that they look for an employer in your cover letter. Yeah, make sure to do your research as early as possible and find out as much as you can about the companies you're applying for. So that actually kind of slides into my next point, number 3, which is to adjust your cover letter and resume dependent on the job. So this is something that I don't think as many people do as they should, but adjusting your cover letter and resume is really important if you want to stand out in a huge pool of applicants, because the more you tailor something to a specific company, the more likely they are to pick you out of 1,000, 100 people, and for you to get that kind of initial interview. For me, I think I have about 4 different resumes right now, and it's all essentially for the same industry, but sometimes the jobs are slightly different from each other. So I have 4 different resumes that I use depending on what exactly the company's looking for. It's obviously still the same experience that I've had, but I highlight different things in the experiences. So for example, I might take something out, like let's say, I don't know, at my banking job that I had to do like investments or something like that for people. So I might take that out if I'm applying to a design job, which is the type of job I've been applying to, and then I might focus more on the customer service aspect of that role, really like gaining people's trust and kind of understanding customer psychology, because that's kind of more applicable to design and more applicable to the type of roles that I'm applying to. No experience is bad experience, obviously. You can find transferable and applicable skills in anything you've done, so just make sure to really hone in on the specific skills that you did that were applicable to the new job that you're applying to. And that kind of goes hand in hand with your cover letter. Those ones should be even more personalized to the company that you're applying to. So I have, for me, like a couple of just like skeletons of a cover letter, and then when I find a company that I apply to, there's sections that I change based on what type of company it is, the industry, the job, showing that I actually took time to research them and that I'm actually really interested in this job. I think that's important because, you know, if you're sending the same cover letter to everyone, they're probably going to realize that it's kind of just your standard cover letter that you send to everyone, and that might deter them from giving you that initial interview. So I think you should really try to do everything in those initial stages to try to stand out, because at least for me, I think getting that initial interview is the hardest part. You know, once they've talked to you over the phone or had their first interview with you, I think it's more up to you and, you know, how you present yourself and all that to get to the second interview. But it's hard to stand out when you're just a piece of paper online. So whatever you can do to make your resume stand out more, you should. And I know it takes a lot of time. Like sometimes when I was applying to jobs the last couple of months, I was getting so frustrated because it would take half an hour to apply to just one job because of all the things I had to change. And I mean, it is frustrating and it's not ideal, but it's worth it in the end. And it's better than, you know, spending 10 minutes on each, but then having to send out like 50 more applications because none of those were accepted or you got an interview from. So my fourth point is a little more applicable to once you've actually received an interview, especially in-person interview, but number 4 is to dress the part. I think this is so key because first impressions always matter, and no matter what company it is, whether it's, you know, a really laid-back casual tech company that has a really laid-back dress code, or whether it's a finance company that has a really strict dress code, you have to make sure you know generally what the dress code is and follow it. But either way, whether you're dressing casual for the interview or wearing business clothes, you should still look put together in that outfit regardless. So I actually have a little story about this. I worked at this place where it was like a customer service job, and one of the employees always looked really like disheveled, and their clothes were always super wrinkly and their hair was kind of messy, and it kind of sometimes just looked like they rolled out of bed and came to work. And I personally think it was noticeable. I think the managers probably noticed too. I'm not sure, obviously can't speak for them, but they had been wanting a promotion for a really long time and they had been there for a while, so they definitely were at the point where they deserved a promotion. And at that point, I had also asked for a promotion, even though I hadn't been there as long. But I felt like, you know, I was doing my job really well and I was ready for the next step. And I actually got the promotion over that person, and I'm not saying it was solely based on appearance because, you know, they always looked so like not put together, but I think that was definitely one of the factors in it because, you know, when it is a customer facing job, obviously you have to look the part and, you know, make sure you look taken care of. You know, it just shows that, I mean, obviously this is my own speculation, but that can deter you from getting promoted or getting the job to begin with. So I think it's always important to try to look your best. And I'm not saying you have to, you know, go out and buy expensive clothing or do crazy makeup or hair or anything like that, but just put on a presentable face and clean, you know, ironed clothing, because I feel like if you show that you care about your appearance, it kind of translates into other aspects of your life, and that, you know, you care about just everything you do and that you are willing to put in a little bit extra effort. So anyways, that was kind of a long-winded third point, but moving on to, or wait, fourth point. But moving on to my fifth point. Oh my god, I just realized my lip gloss was here the whole time. Oh well. Okay, so moving on to my fifth point, which is to send a follow-up. After you've had an interview, it doesn't matter what stage of the interview, I think it's important to send a follow-up to the hiring manager or the HR person that you talk to or whoever that you talk to. Send them a quick note the next day, or even the day of if it's like early in the day and you can send it a couple hours later. But send them a thank you for their time. It was great learning more about the company and potentially why you want to continue working there after talking to them. So I think this is important because it sets you apart from others that maybe don't take the time to send this email, and it kind of reminds the recruiter of who you are and that you are willing to kind of go the extra mile to get the job. So I found that when I've sent these emails, I usually get a reply and they're, not grateful, but they're responsive, and I usually also get a second interview in those cases. So I don't know if that's just by chance that I've sent one and get a second interview, but I think it definitely helps in the process and it doesn't hurt. Even if you just send it just to say thanks for your time, whatever, I think that they appreciate that, and yeah, it's not a bad idea. Also, I have another little story about follow-ups. The job that I actually got an offer for this week, I actually followed up with them a couple of times. So I had my interview maybe 2 months ago with them for the first time, and I hadn't heard back in a couple of weeks. So I was like, oh, let me just send a follow-up, to see where they're at, because I'm actually really interested in this job. So I might as well, send something to give them a little reminder that, hey, I'm still here and interested. So I sent them a follow-up, and then the next day she was like, oh yeah, like we're gonna schedule a second interview with you. Sorry, we've been busy, blah, blah, blah. So that just kind of reminded them that, hey, I'm still here and interested, because sometimes it might not be their priority to hire, but it kind of brings it back to their front and center. So I had the second interview with them, and then same thing, like 2 or 3 weeks went by, I hadn't heard anything back. So I was like, I have nothing to lose, let's send another follow-up. So I sent another one, and same thing, they're like, oh yeah, like let's schedule another interview. So they scheduled an interview for like the day after. I was like, okay, clearly like it worked. And then like Christmas time came around, so obviously like they probably weren't really in the office or working. So I hadn't heard from them in a couple weeks again. So after like the Christmas break time was done, I sent them another follow-up email. They're just like, hey, hope you guys had a great holiday. I'm still interested. What does the time frame look like? So I know, blah, 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 blah. Then I got a final interview with them because of that, and then I received an offer. So it shows that you can't really follow up too many times. I mean, don't send them an email like every day, but I think it's fair to send them an email after a couple of weeks if you haven't heard back from them after, each stage of the interview process. Just because they're not emailing you doesn't mean they're still not interested, or they're not still interested, but sometimes other things come up and they kind of forget. And I feel like if you send a follow-up, it brings it back to their attention, and yeah, you can get a job that way. So my 6th point is to be patient. So like I kind of said in my last point, it took me like 2 months to get an offer for this job. Sometimes the hiring process is very, very slow. That doesn't mean you should lose hope. And if there's a job that you really are interested in, but you're not hearing back, just wait a little bit. It might seem like, oh, they're never gonna get back to me, or oh, I didn't get the job, but that's not necessarily true, and sometimes you just gotta play the waiting game. And clearly, like, it worked out for me this time. I did not think that I would still get the job after like a 2-month process. I thought like, oh, they're definitely like just, I don't know, kind of not looking for anyone anymore, or they're like not that interested in me anymore. But sometimes good things take time, so don't jump to conclusions. And yeah, if you've been too patient and you haven't heard anything back, then just send another follow-up. And then my 7th and final point is it's okay to say no. If you're at a point where you've gotten an offer, but it's not the offer you expected or not the offer you want, it's okay to say no to offers. And I know that might seem like, oh, well, if you have no other options on the table, you should just take it. That is, kind of true. Like, if you do really need the money, always take it until you find something better. But sometimes I don't think it's worth it to kind of put yourself through that situation or work with a company that doesn't either respect you or respect its employees, or for whatever reason just doesn't fit with your own expectations for either the company culture or the type of work that you want to do. So I have another example for this, because I've just been having so many interview experiences and like job application experience in the last little while that I've had like so many random stories about this kind of stuff. But yeah, I was interviewing at a company, I think maybe in November, and this was for a sales role because at this point I was like applying to sales and design roles because I was like, well, whatever comes first, like that's fine, and then, you know, I can move to design when the time comes because I was also doing some freelance on the side. So for this sales role, I went to their interview in person and it went really well, and I was like, okay, like I'm definitely gonna get that job. And then at the end of the interview he was like, okay, like yeah, we really like you, but if you could just like complete this little assignment for us, and then once you complete it we'll go over like how you did. And you know, it made it sound like I would pretty much like get the job after that if I did it well, which like I knew I would. So I was like, okay, like that's fine. He didn't tell me what the assignment was in person. He just sent it to me later over email. So once I got the assignment, my opinion of the company changed a little bit. So the assignment was asking me to come up with 10 different leads from a specific area, and then they wanted me to write out like 3 bullet points as to why I chose those leads. So for those of you that don't know, for sales you have to try to find people to buy the product. So they wanted me to find 10 different companies and thoroughly research them, so I have 3 points to support why I picked those companies that could potentially be their clients. That was one thing. And then they wanted me to find 3 different social media accounts that were doing a really good job at marketing and had a really big following, and then do a little write-up as to why I think they're doing well and stuff like that. So they wanted me to do this pretty big assignment, I think, for a sales job. I've never had any assignment for any other sales interview I've had, and I've had a few sales jobs in the past, and I've never had to do anything like this. So at first I was ready to do it because I was in kind of the state of mind where I was like, well, I don't care, I just need a job, it doesn't matter what it is or what I have to do. But then I was telling some of my friends, some of my family this assignment, and I was like, is it just me or this a little crazy? They want me to find 10 leads for them without being paid or anything like that. So yeah, once I told my friends and family that, they were like, no, you should not do that. They're literally taking advantage of you pretty much, because they're gonna get free leads out of this pretty much. And it's one thing to ask me to find maybe 1 or 2 leads, maybe even 3, just to show that I can do it and I know how to do it. But when you're asking for 10, I feel like that's kind of a little much, because that takes a while. My friend who's also in sales, she was appalled. She's like, I've never heard of this, for the industry to do that. Finding leads takes a long time. That's not just an easy feat, and the fact they're asking you to find 10 is just ridiculous. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, but I needed someone else to kind of rationalize it with me. I feel like I said, it's one thing to find 1 or 2 to show that you can do it, but 10 is just way too much, and it's unreasonable, I think. Imagine if they had even just 5 candidates that they're interviewing. If each of those 5 have to find 10 leads, that's 50 free leads for this company. So obviously they know what they're doing in regards to getting free work, but that's not the type of company that I want to work for. And if they think that's okay, then that shows a little bit about their character. And after a couple of days I gave it some thought, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna email them and tell them that I'm not interested anymore, because yeah, there's no way I'm doing this, just out of principle. Yeah, I emailed them and I was like, well, thanks for the opportunity, blah blah blah. I was obviously nice and I didn't say anything, but I told them that I was going in another direction and I wasn't interested anymore. So I think that was kind of a learning experience, because up until that point I had never really said no to an opportunity, and I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat, and especially when they're looking for their first real job, they'll kind of take anything they can get. But sometimes it's worth it to wait, and goes to show that I waited a little bit and actually found a job in the career that I wanted. So sometimes, yeah, it's just not worth it to take, the first job that comes your way, or a job that doesn't kind of value you or respect you. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any weird stories about turning down a job, or any weird requests that job interviewers have asked you to do. I'd love to hear them in the comments. Yeah, those are kind of my 7 tips of how to get a job after college or university. I think obviously there's a lot more, and I can do a second video, but those are kind of the key things that I've noticed in my time of looking for a job. If you can try those out, let me know how they go for you. I'd also love to know if you guys have any other tips that I missed. See you next time. Bye.